At a certain moment, my life came crashing down. I've more or less adjusted to it by now. Everyone around me seemed to be off chasing their dreams and enjoying their lives, while I was stuck in a daze. Then, Harper dropped a bombshell. I'm pregnant. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. It caught me completely off guard, but after a moment of panic, I felt a wave of joy and excitement. I was looking forward to the arrival of my son. The first few months were tough. James was a handful, but my wife and I hung in there, supporting each other through the sleepless nights, giving each other the space to rest. I spent as much time as I could with James, loving him deeply. But that's when things started to feel off. It took me a while to notice, but slowly it became clear that Harper seemed happier when I was away than when I came back. I began to ask her, "What's going on? Why are you acting this way?" She replied, "You're never home. I'm tired of being alone. I can quit my job and stay here all the time if you prefer." I tried to stay calm and avoid an argument, but I couldn't help myself from saying, "And then what? Are we just going to sit around and do nothing?" I didn't push the issue any further, but I couldn't shake the feeling of resentment. I didn't fully understand why she was treating me this way. So, I left for a business trip, feeling completely down. Looking back, I can't even explain how it happened, but I regret it deeply. I wasn't alone that night, and I take full responsibility. Thankfully, no one ever found out. However, that incident added a layer of tension to our relationship. Harper became distant, and no matter how hard I tried to be the perfect husband, things weren't the same. We barely had any intimacy, maybe 4 times in 6 months. So, imagine my shock when I found out, for the second time, that Harper was pregnant again. Doubts started to creep in, and they quickly became my constant companions, especially the day I picked up a little blonde-haired kid. Well, as it turns out, I'm actually naturally blonde too, my wife once mentioned, and after that, we just dropped the subject. Olivia grew up to be surprisingly calm and well-behaved, but there was something different about her. She didn't resemble either of us much at all, just this beautiful little blonde angel with enormous green eyes. That's when I started to have doubts and began looking for any clues that might confirm my growing suspicions. Harper, meanwhile, kept disappearing when I was home. She'd say she needed some time to herself to rest and recharge. She also developed postpartum depression, and she was seeing a psychologist. A month later, I stumbled across something. How exactly? Well, that's another story. I found a photo on her phone, but it was clear she didn't even try to hide it. She wasn't even subtle about the affair. How do you explain this? I asked her, trying not to lose my temper. I knew deep down that this was my own reckoning catching up with me after my own betrayal. There's nothing to explain, Harper shrugged. I'd been alone for too long, and it was just a release. I didn't press further. I needed time to think. But the doubt gnawed at me day and night. It was then that I decided to get a DNA test. I had to know for sure. I can't say I was completely shocked by her response. Deep down, I already knew Olivia wasn't mine. I had seen it coming. "We're getting divorced," I told Harper that evening. I couldn't bear the thought of raising another man's child any longer. Harper didn't even protest. At that point, I don't think she really cared about our marriage. The divorce was finalized quickly. Throughout our time together, I had managed to secure a couple of apartments and cars for my family, so Harper and the kids stayed in the apartment we'd shared, and I moved into a different one. It seemed like this was where the story would end. But then my lawyer brought something up. "Why hasn't your ex-wife filed for alimony for her first child?" And that's when it hit me like a bucket of cold water. This can't be happening, I thought, staring at the results of the test. It was already done, and with Harper's consent, yet again, the result was negative. That's what finally knocked the wind out of me. Fortunately, my boss was understanding and immediately sent me on vacation to clear my head. I couldn't pull myself together for a month, barely spoke to anyone, and stayed away from everyone. I didn't even see the kids. Then, I reached a decision. The children weren't to blame for any of this. After all, I'd always been their dad. I'd raised them, and I wasn't just some outsider. But imagine my shock when my daughter looked at me and said, "Uncle Asher," and my son. He couldn't even look me in the eye. No, I wouldn't abandon them. I'd help them if they needed it. 8 years. You don't just forget that. Was I angry at my ex-wife? Yes, of course. I was furious about the lies, the betrayal, and the years of deception. But what made me the angriest was how she had turned the kids against me, even though I hadn't done anything wrong to them. After some time, I started to pull myself together. And now, all I hope for is that one day I'll have my own children, children who are truly mine and no one else's.